This is probably going to be one of my most vulnerable personal experiences that I've shared on the podcast so far. And I've actually been talking about this for quite some time, like it's come up in previous episodes that this is a topic I've wanted to share more about. And I feel ready to. I feel as though I have fully healed. I've grown so much, learnt so much, reflected back and seen the real impact from a healthy, healed perspective. And it's taught me valuable lessons of where I could be better as a person as well. I could do better. I could show up better, love myself more, stay firmer with my boundaries, enforce my boundaries, my values, and communicate better. Just everything. And definitely attract more healthy, healed men and healthier relationships going forward. So it was around about this time last year actually that I ended my very first and last, I say that because it will definitely be my last, toxic and unhealthy relationship. It was the end of March that happened, and it was a journey. It was such a short relationship, and there's a part of me that I feel as though I can't even count it as a relationship because the whole thing was just such a blur. It was definitely not what I have been used to in past relationships, for sure. And I don't know, I just feel like I wasn't myself back then, and what I put up with is certainly not me, and I would never do it again, that's for sure. And also I would like to hope that no one else would as well. And I hope that if nothing else, people can learn from the experiences that I share here, the lessons that I've learned, maybe even see their own areas of where they may need to improve or where they may see potential red flags. Obviously, I don't want to start pointing fingers and things and saying, if this happens to you, if that happens to you, this isn't about that. This is about my personal experience. But I'd like to think that with listening to this and having your own take and perspective on your own situation as well, it may help you. It may help you pinpoint areas that there could be some slight flaws, and whether that is something that you do really want to work on for yourself, or if it's something that you need to walk away from, because I can guarantee that there are a mixed bag of people that are going to listen to this episode where maybe some of you are in a toxic relationship right now and don't feel that you can leave. Or maybe there's just a few little niggles. Maybe it's the very beginning of a relationship, but there's been a couple of red flags, but you're wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt. There's no finger pointing here, no judgment, because many of us have probably been in this situation before. I'm just here to share my story with you, and I hope that whatever you take away from that is positive and points you in the right direction no matter what. And if you are single, if you are looking for a relationship, this is definitely the sort of shit that you need to pick up on and avoid, just from my perspective. And it's certainly, like I say, I've learned a lot from it. So yeah, here goes. Okay, just to paint a picture or a scene of where I was at the time of meeting my ex-partner, who turned out to be just really not good for me whatsoever. I returned back from Bali in April of 2023. So 2 years ago now, almost. And at the time I was actually seeing someone over in Bali, but of course upon coming home we were still in touch, and I wasn't fully certain whether I would be staying here in England or would be going back and things like that. But it was very much a casual relationship. It mutually worked for both of us at the time. But yeah, so I'd just come back recently and I was trying to get back into my usual routines, going to the gym, things like that. And this is where I met my ex-partner who, worked at the gym that I was going to at the time. And upon a couple of conversations, early doors, I realised that we got on quite well. We always chatted. It was one of those people that you just chat to every time. Easy flowing conversation, just very light-hearted. There was no physical attraction on my part, at least. It wasn't really my type at all. But we got on. We had good chats. And very quickly I learned that he wasn't originally from this area, from Bolton. He was more based around North Manchester originally. That's where a lot of his friends were, family, things like that. And he mentioned a lot about his old friends all very much being into drugs, and every weekend they just get off their faces, and he wants to be walking up Rivington Pike and things like that, and there's no one really to do anything with. He'd kind of left that old life behind. And I also very quickly learnt that his dad was sadly terminally unwell. He had lung cancer. And this was all quite soon after I'd come home, and we'd formed a bit of a friendship anyway, because I'll be honest with you, how it started is I felt sorry for him. So here we go, that's where it all starts. Your typical empath, feeling sorry for someone, wanting to be there for them, wanting to be a good friend, things like that. So how it started was, we just went out for coffee once, we went out on a walk, and we just really got on. And I felt sorry for him, and I thought he was a very good, kind-hearted person, and I actually enjoyed the conversations that we had. So of course there was a lot that I enjoyed about spending the time with him as well. But of course it was a very difficult time for him. And to be honest, he was always rather negative. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, I wouldn't expect him to be absolutely living his best life when he's got so much going on with his dad and, other things that was probably going on in the background as well. I'm not expecting him to show up as his best self, but I did notice very early on that he was quite a negative, glass half empty kind of guy. Really quite low energy, low mood. But equally, like I say, it all just went back to I felt sorry for him, and I felt that I brought out a positive side in him. He always seemed happy around me and things like that, and that was the side that I liked of him. As a friendship, going back to that, as a friendship. So I enjoyed spending time with him, and we always had a nice time together. And then a couple of months went on, and that just sort of slowly, very slowly intensified. I'd be at his a couple of times when we'd watch a movie, we'd be quite close to each other on the sofa, get a takeaway, go out on these walks, and we'd even hold hands and do like a meditation and things, because we're quite deep, I'm quite deep like that anyway, so I'm all about contact and things like that. I'm fine with that. And of course, as a good friend, again, I felt fine with that and comfortable with that. But it was almost like one thing led to another. But I mean, this should have been a major red flag, because even the way that we got together was kind of initially it started from an argument, actually. The week that his father had sadly passed away in September, and his funeral was coming up, and I was in hospital at the time on the week that his funeral was coming up. Now, by the way, I will point out straight away, I wasn't in hospital unwell. I was taking part in a clinical trial, so I was totally fine, totally well, no problems. And it's not that I couldn't respond or things like that, but as I was in hospital and we was not in a relationship, we were not dating, nothing like that, but I hadn't been as openly communicative with him. Maybe a couple of back and forth messages, a call or two, things like that. And then I was quiet for a few days just because I was busy in my own thing, doing my work and just enjoying the peace and things like that. But I did know that his dad's funeral was coming up. So I made a point in my mind, as we often do, I need to message so-and-so like the day before or whatever to just, make sure that he's doing okay, that he's well and things like that. because I genuinely cared and I wanted to make sure that he was okay. But by this point, in between that time period of a couple of days where we weren't in touch, which again was perfectly normal, I think he had come to the conclusion, of which he did express, he came to the conclusion that I didn't care about him, that I wasn't bothered. He was really quite upset that I hadn't reached out to him, why I'd just ghosted him, gone quiet. And especially knowing that his dad's funeral was on the way, that I should have been there for him more so, and things like that. So with that, I did actually receive quite a few messages. So initially it was all very much like either something terrible has happened at the clinical trial, or you've fallen out with me, or something or other. And I just responded like, no, everything's fine, just been busy, blah, blah, blah. And just had general conversation. And then on the day of his dad's funeral, I had messaged just sort of to say, I really hope that you're okay today, or as good as can be expected. Sending your love for today. I hope that all goes smoothly. And I got a response back for saying that actually I've made this week hell for him, and what is already a difficult week I've made even worse. So as you can imagine, I'm like, whoa, where's this come from? And of course, being your typical empath, healer, being this kind-hearted, loving energy towards others, I was really upset. And of course, started questioning where I'd gone wrong, and that this was a me problem, when actually it wasn't. It never was. Looking back, well, even at the time I knew that deep down, and we did end up having a couple of days of like back and forth messages and what have you, but right away that should have been the sign for me to have walked away, to be honest, because it kind of just went downhill from there. I got very insanely lengthy messages of all the areas where I have let him down in this situation, that I've not been there for him, that it's the least that he'd have expected. It's even some accusations of like how I'd changed my profile picture so he thought I was with someone else. And was I even really in hospital? Like, there was fucking loads. Like, it was intense. And I actually showed the messages to a few people on the trial with me, and they were like, oh my fucking God, you need to block this guy. He is absolutely tapped in the head, But I, of course, by this point was already attached, and this is the downside of it, isn't it? When you find that attachment with someone where, again, if you're an empath, you just want to see the good in someone. You really, really do. And I did see the good in this person, albeit in this situation, he was wrong inherently. And I did express that I would not be spoken to in that way. I don't know where all of this has come from. But yeah, I'd even said things like that he was going to speak to the manager about getting me banned from the gym because he knew that he wouldn't be able to work there with me in it. It's just like a fucking joke. It really is. And even I responded very well at the time. I just sort of said I'm happy to speak to the gym as well. I certainly won't be being banned. Because I was happy if we weren't going to be friends anymore. I was more than happy to just go into the gym, do my thing. We didn't have to speak. I'm an adult. I can get over that. There's no drama, no bad blood. I'll be nice to anyone regardless. But he just was adamant that he couldn't work there with me there. So he would look at getting me banned, and I'm like, I'll happily speak to the gym as well and explain that they have a member of staff speaking to their members in this way. And I don't think that would go down well. So, yeah, this is before we've even got together. Can you actually believe, listening to all this, can you believe that me, knowing me now, as many of you do from listening to my podcast, following me on social media, everything that you know about me, everything that I portray, would you believe that I actually went on to be with this guy? Oh, like, I'm laughing at myself now because it's fucking pathetic. I don't know what I was thinking. It was like a real moment of error. But again, looking back, all I can say is I didn't feel vulnerable at the time. One of my friends did mention a couple of months down the line when we was actually together, and when obviously a lot of things were starting to happen, she did mention how I was vulnerable to it at the time. And I remember saying to her, but I don't feel that I was. And again, me not thinking I'm vulnerable is because I read, journal, podcast, doing my meditation, doing all my self-development, my growth, and feeling good overall. But actually, when I really reflect and look back, I was vulnerable. I'd moved back to England only 4 or 5 months prior to a lot of this starting to happen. For a while, I was planning to move back to Bali, but then all of a sudden, no, I'm staying. It wasn't the right thing to do for me to go back. I was back living at my mum's house. I had no car, was back on like the buses, public transport, taxis. I wasn't making any money in my business. I was in a lot of debt. So when I'm listing all these things now, and it's like, of course I was fucking vulnerable. But I thought just because I was doing some meditation and, you know, being all positive in my mindset, because I am. But deep down, there was a real lack of self-love, self-worth. There was a lot of, I just needed someone to hold me, to make everything right. And of course, seeking that masculine energy. So it's basically like the first person, well, not even the first person because he wasn't, but he really did pursue me in a way. The person that was consistent with giving me attention, was wanting to spend time with me, was messaging me, was showing up, I latched onto, subconsciously, unknowingly latched onto that. So yeah, looking back, I was extremely vulnerable, and yeah, this is why I tolerated so much shit. And it's just hilarious now looking back, and I just think, wow, how far I have come since that woman then is just insane. It really is. And again, I hope through listening to this, maybe these little things that might speak to you or relate or just help you with your own perspective and experiences and your story, your journey and your own situation. So yeah, that was all while I was in hospital. We ended up having a big long phone call, as to which he literally just chewed my ear off. But at the end of it, he just said, look, when you get out, let's just meet up, let's just chat, air it, whatever. And obviously at the time, I did want to air it because, again, at the time, I was very much a person who didn't want anyone to not like me, to think I'm a bad person, to think negatively of me, for me to have hurt anyone. I couldn't deal with that. Whereas now I'd just be like, do you know what? You think what you want. I know that I'm an incredible person. I know that I have good morals and values, and I know that I show up in the best way possible. And I know that as a woman, I am perfectly capable to stand up for myself and be firm when needed without being labelled as, you know, heartless or non-caring or a bitch, whatever. It's just so untrue. So please listen to this, guys. Like, you know, stand up for yourselves. And if someone thinks you're a fucking bitch for it, or you're a heartless cow, whatever, then let them think that way. Because if you know, hand on heart, that you're showing up in the best way possible and simply just standing up for yourself and your values, then yeah, fuck them all. Anyway, there's a lot of swearing in this episode. But yeah, so anyway, I came out of hospital and we did meet up and aired everything as I wanted to do, and that was that. But things were just different then. It just shifted everything for me. Initially, it was that I just wanted to maintain my distance. But then there was a part of me that almost became curious of this guy who really opened up his heart and sent all these messages that the only reason he was so hurt and upset is because of how much he cared about me and how much he hoped for a relationship with me and how much he saw me as this incredible person that he wanted to spend all this time with and blah-de-blah-de-blah. It made me curious. And there's a lot of science behind this as well. And I'm going to go into this in future episodes, like the science behind, early dating and relationships, because I've spoken about it before, like breadcrumbing. Now, this was a very different situation, but kind of a similar effect on the brain. When someone's treated you in such a way that's made you question your own self, the way you show up in the world, your identity, and shown you also with that of how much they care and how much they like you, and it's such mixed messages. It really shifts something within you and does almost start emitting all those transmitters of like the dopamine response, which is the similar thing that you get with the breadcrumbing of, oh my gosh, they've messaged me even though they've ghosted you for a week. And it's an effect that we become addicted to the positive response, that we just focus on that. We focus, and we're just wanting to get our next fix. Very different situation in this respect. I wasn't ghosted. I certainly wasn't breadcrumbed. It was all in, like he was obsessed with me, unhealthily in a way. But yeah, same kind of response, that it actually turned things around and made me curious and made me start liking him. It's so weird. 2 or 3 weeks later, I think maybe is when we, started dating. We went out a couple of times, we shared a kiss, what have you. And yeah, stupidly, again, at the time, I was a very different person then. I slept with him very early on, which that doesn't make any difference in this situation. Obviously, I see it now that I just want to wait a long time until I am truly madly deeply in love and feel extremely respected. I just want to wait like what I feel is an appropriate amount of time. I think I'm more just disappointed that I gave my beautiful energy away to him so easily. And yeah, just everything really. From there, it was just intense. That we got together very quickly. And it just honestly spiraled. It spiraled. So I think the very day that we, officially got together, or, he'd asked me to be his girlfriend, which was, again, too soon. But I just went along with it because I just felt like, wow, this guy really likes me. Not questioning the facts as to whether I even like him or if I want to have him as my boyfriend. It was just like, oh, he really likes me. He wants me to be his girlfriend. Anyway, the day that happened is the very next day he chose to leave the gym. He actually quit his job. And all that ties into that. I've brought it up on a previous episode. I do remember that I got on with a lot of the guys at my gym. I've been there for 8-9 years, a long time. And I was very well known. I knew a lot of people, and there were some people that I had history with, okay? And he found out about one particular guy, but there was a few that he just wasn't happy with the amount of attention that I was getting off them, how they were speaking to me all the time, the way that some of them would touch me. And so, yeah, he quit his job. He said, oh, look, I can't be there anymore. I can get another job elsewhere, fresh start, whatever. So I was like, great, good for you, whatever's best. Unbeknown to me is him leaving that gym meant I also had to leave the gym. And it was done in a way of, we can find you somewhere else to go, we can have a whole fresh start. But deep down, he actually admitted to this, is that if I did go back, he'd be really hurt, he'd be really upset, he'd be really disappointed if I went back to that gym. So, bearing in mind I'd actually paid up front, so I probably had another, 5 or 6 months left on my membership. So he was very good in the sense of that he said that he would pay for my membership elsewhere. He would help me with any transport, if it was further away, because remember, I didn't have a car. He would also help me with driving there and things like that. So yeah, it was just sold in this way that I was just like, do you know what? It's probably nice. We can have a fresh start somewhere. And at the time, so he used to work at a different gym in the past. And he was potentially going back to that same chain. And so I decided to sign up to a new gym. under the pretense that I would actually be getting a bit of a discount or a free add-on membership for when he got a job there. That didn't happen. And we'll come back to that in due course. In the meantime, other little niggles along the way, when we was going through the phase of trying new gyms and things, I'm very much up and out, very dedicated, ready to go, excited for the day, positive, optimistic, feeling good, high on life, whatever. And he would turn up and would go to the gym, and I'd get in the car like, morning, like I do. And he's just like, oh. I'm like, oh gosh, are you okay? And it'd just be like, we'd either not slept well, or he just didn't feel well, or he wasn't in the mood to train. And when that's how your day starts, when you're the complete opposite, of course, when two energies align, you find that it's often the case that you come down to one's energy rather than the other come up to yours. So yeah, it definitely affected me. And bearing in mind, this was probably at least 2 or 3 times a week that there'd be situations like this. I'd go around to his, I would go out, and it's just like, oh yeah, just this happened and that happened, and life sucks, and this is shit, and that's shit. And it was impacting people. Can you see that this is just very small things like planting seeds, but by a month or 2 from this point, it massively changed me. To the extent of where I was barely wanting to get out of bed. I just stayed in bed most of the time because that negative energy had attached to me, had affected my perspective, my mindset, and just had me spiraling to such a negative state. And then a few other things would happen where one morning we woke up and he was feeling a bit meh. I'd actually had a bad dream of where I'd kissed someone else. And I was like, oh, it's a bad dream, whatever. But he's like, yeah, I know, but it kind of does remind me of you was dating, even though we was seeing each other and meeting up, and you mentioned that you'd been chatting to someone else and been on this online dating, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, what the actual fuck? We was never dating. We were never seeing each other. We was friends. I saw us as being friends, but clearly he had such a different reality in his mind, to the extent of where he openly admitted that he thought we was dating on this particular day. He thought that we were dating from then. And it was like sometime in August, September, when, as far as I was concerned, we were friends, and I was actually on an online dating website and going on dates because I had no intention of that with him. It's just mental, and it was just little things like this, little niggles all the time. And a lot of the time, of course, he'd obviously left his job at this point, didn't have any money, so we didn't really officially date anyway. Never really got taken out. A lot of the time was just spent in his dirty, miserable flat. And again, it just massively impacted me so negatively. I'd go around, there wasn't even any food in. I'd have to take my own meals. Like, if I knew that I was going to the gym the next day, I knew that I would have to take my own food with me because there wasn't anything there. Sometimes I'd take meals from my freezer at home because I knew that he had nothing in to eat as well. And again, I felt sorry for him. But can you see how, in a way, it almost became that I was just nurturing him, looking after him, doing anything that I could to try and make him feel better, at the sacrifice of myself. And that is essentially where I just lost myself. Yeah, there were just a few couple of instances like that, so I was already a bit like, oh, this is interesting. Certainly not what I'm used to. Again, from my past relationships, I've always been in, positive relationships. There was none of this, especially so early on when it's the most exciting time, isn't it? Let's be honest. But the occasion where I really questioned everything quite dramatically was at the very end of the year. It was just after Christmas, and this was an occasion where he'd come to the gym with me again. And we got there, and he was totally fine. He was actually in good energy of that day. He was feeling good, everything was fine. And we got there, and this guy said hi to me. And he's a very attractive guy. Like, he's really good looking. And of course, I speak to him even now. Like, I'll chat to him if he's there, or at least I'll just say hi, you know, let on to him. And he said, who's that? How do you know him? And I said, oh, he's just one of the bouncers at a bar that I go to occasionally. Yeah, he's sometimes on the doors there, so I know him through that. And he's like, oh, right, okay. So I thought that was that. And anyway, starts going, and I'm literally visualizing this as I say it. So he goes over to the bench press, sat in like warming up with a dumbbell and that, and he's doing his own thing, and just his whole demeanor, his whole energy. Oh my God, he looks miserable as fuck. It like someone had shit in his face. I don't know. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's wrong with you? Bearing in mind, this was probably 5 minutes after, so I'm just like carrying on, whatever. And then I notice this change in him, and he's just like, oh, I just hate Bolton. I hate it here. I can't wait to get you out of here. And I remember saying, what do you mean? Oh, you just know everyone. I hate it. I hate that people know you. And I'm just like, I've been brought up here. I've lived here all my life. Of course, I'm going to know people. Of course, I'm going to say hi to people. What is the big deal? But he just didn't like it because he said, you know, at the end of the day, this is like, I'm worried. I'm worried because, you know, how many exes have you got here? Or how many people have you sat with here and things like that? And I actually, this was the first time that I actually said something along the lines of, do you know what? I can't do this. I'm not putting up with this. Like this again, really? And in the end, we cut the training session short because his energy was just so fucking shit. And I just wanted to leave. And so as we was leaving, I actually said, do you know what? I'm just going to walk into town. But he didn't want me to. He wanted me to get in his car so we could chat more about it, of which we barely did. But yeah, I just sort of said in this situation, you know, I'm not going to change who I am for anyone. I do speak to people. I am a positive person. I like to smile. I like to chat with people, men, women alike. And I'm not going to change who I am. And I said, this is a you problem here. I can talk to whoever I want. So in this situation, I did very much stand up for myself. And he was very apologetic, and he said he appreciates that it is his problem and that it just wasn't working, that we were even going to the gym together, that while he's going through this, whatever it is that he's going through, his own demons, his own issues with me and with his circumstances and things like that, maybe we just don't train together and maybe we just do our own thing and he can just not worry about seeing things that he doesn't want to see or whatever. And after a long discussion and things like that, we decided to leave it and, you know, forget about it because it was his mum's party that night. And also he was very much, and I made a point of saying this as well, because he was so fixated on the new year. He just wanted to start the new year, to have a fresh start, to just see the back of 2023. Was it? Yeah, 2023. He just wanted to see the back of that year. He wanted a fresh start. He was feeling like he just needed, and I remember saying to him, nothing's going to change on the 1st of January. There's not just some big switch, because we're all guilty of that, aren't we, by the way? Even me alike, like, oh my God, new year, like I just need a new start, and everything's going to be hunky-dory and change dramatically, and everything's just going to align and fall into place and be perfect. And it's like, no, just be realistic. You can change that any day. It doesn't take a year to switch. And I knew that for him, he wasn't going to switch, so it wasn't going to take a new calendar year for him to switch. So yeah, I did obviously speak up a lot more on that occasion, but we did decide to just, you know, be amicable, go to this party and take it from there. But that was where I did really question things with this guy. And then just to give you a little bit of insight into just, again, day-to-day things, I mentioned quite early on. So let's just say we made it official in November. So this happened in, obviously, December. But very early on, I mentioned how I'd love for him to make me breakfast. Obviously, I've told you about, you know, that I used to have to take my own breakfast with me a lot. I'd love him to make me breakfast. I'd love to have poached egg on toast in bed. And I remember saying it I never got it. I never got it from him. And I remember saying to a friend, I have to take my own breakfast with me, and I've asked him so many times, like, when are you going to make poached egg on toast for me? It'd be really nice that. I'd love for you to cook for me, make my breakfast. And she's just like, you're actually not even getting the bare minimum. You do know that, Beck. Like, you're actually taking your own food with you. You're not even getting the bare minimum from this guy. He doesn't take you out. He doesn't have food and you have to take your own food. You can't speak to any guys. He didn't really want me to work. Oh, that was it. Yeah, so that was the next thing. I was also looking for jobs because obviously I was in my network marketing business and I was looking for little bits of work to do along the side because obviously I just wasn't making any money. And knowing how much I love the gym, I love being there, I love everything about it, why not get a job there myself? And I got an interview somewhere. He didn't want me to go. So I didn't. He didn't want me to be on a desk with all men walking past and trying to talk to me. Just listing everything out. It's embarrassing as I'm talking about this episode. And I'm still not even... I don't feel like I'm even halfway there yet. I was struggling to pay my bills. And he wouldn't let me go to an interview, but he told me, look, I'll help you out with money. I'll make sure you've got money. He was hoping to start working with his brother in the new year, doing trades work, kitchens, bathrooms, things like that. And he said, look, I can get a lot of money. I can get you on it with the social media. We can pay you a set rate every month. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. And I said to him, look, I need you to guarantee this. If I'm not going to a job interview, I need you to guarantee this money anyway. He didn't start, which meant, of course, I didn't start. I was in a shocking situation of where I was struggling to pay my bills because by this point, with my business, I was just not making any money. I was not making the money and I still had the bills. So already in this situation, I got with this guy because I almost felt sorry for him. He made me change gyms. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't speak to anybody. Oh, and he did make a point of a particular piece of swimwear that he wasn't quite keen on because it went into my butt just a little bit too much. Now, I know a lot of these girls do wear these swimwear now that go right into your jacksie. And I'm not the world's biggest fan on them myself because I think it is just like a little bit too much skin. Don't come at me, that's just my opinion. Yeah, if you're on the beach in Marbella or whatever, but in a leisure centre by the pool, for me it just doesn't feel appropriate, but that's just my personal opinion. But obviously this particular swimwear, it does slightly go a little bit more around the butt, like there's a little bit more butt cheek showing. And he made a point of that. He didn't like me wearing that, and that women who wear those sort of swimwears are just asking for it. There was also an outfit that I wore for one of our nights out that we did go on. We went for a few drinks prior to Christmas, and he said that he certainly wouldn't want me to go out on my own with that because it makes me look like I'm single and I want a guy to approach me. The sort of views and opinions that he has on women, that he has on men, because he made a point of saying, look, any man would react this way when he's birds talking to so-and-so or when she's wearing this. Like, we don't want that. As an alpha male, I don't want my girl doing this, speaking to them. Moving swiftly on, I feel like a lot of this episode, it's revolved around the gym. It's where we met, it's where a lot of the issues happened, it's where he didn't want me to get a job, and now to the next thing. So with regards to how I'd changed gyms and then he wasn't going to get a job as part of that chain anymore, but because I already had a membership there, we decided mutually that it would be beneficial that if he signed up there as well, we could save money, have a joint membership. So he signed up, but of course I was the one who had a membership, so he signed up under me. Well, I'm sure you know where this is going already, don't you? Let's just say 5 months down the line, he's owing me all of those payments. I have since got that money back, by the way, but yeah, that's where that went. Everything with this guy, everything with this situation, and I also became his funder and his bank account. Me, as a woman, funding a man's life, a man's gym membership, a man's shopping. being able to put fuel in his car, just everything. And the relationship, as I later ended up saying to him, of which he did agree with, to be fair, there was a major role reversal in that relationship, that I was the masculine in that relationship. I was the provider, I was the supporter, I was the one who was helping in every which way to keep him afloat, to keep him emotionally sane, to keep him feeling cared for and supported. And yeah, it was just a fucking massive drain in every which way. But yeah, moving into January, so I've mentioned about the payments, but into January he got really sick. Actually, in January he'd had a couple of illnesses, just like general bits like cold and what have you, but then this one particular night he got really unwell. And I'd gone round to his house. Already by this point, I'll be honest, like, I'm not really enjoying this relationship in any way. And I'm already questioning everything. And I needed to get out. But on this one particular night, I'd gone round to his. He'd come and pick me up. But he said he wasn't feeling that great. We had plans that evening, but he wasn't well enough to go. And this isn't his fault. This is like the toxic side of me as well. But everything about this guy became a burden to me, but it's a burden that I continued to take, do you know? So this is where I am the problem in this situation as well, because I just took it, I accepted it, and I wasn't happy, you know? But even on the night that he was unwell, for example, and he's throwing his guts up in the toilet, and I'm like, right, do you need any paracetamol? Do you need some water? This, that, and the other. And I'm just sat on the sofa as he comes out. And maybe I looked a little bit negative, probably because I fucking were. I was like fed up, and I was just like, what am I doing here? What am I here for? Other than to, you know, pat your head, feed you some soup. Like, I'm happy to do all those things, but I didn't really like the guy. You know, I'm like listening to myself, someone saying this, and I'm thinking, you're the fucking toxic one here. But I was in this situation, and I'll openly admit to that. But it's because I was literally just so burnt out, low on energy, so drained, so negative myself. I could no longer show up for him, is what I'm getting at. I could barely even show up for myself. And that was through being, as I mentioned earlier, and as we discussed together, is that I was showing up as this masculine for so long. We get burnt out as women. We are not designed in that way. We are not. And I got so burnt out. I'd had all my light, all my energy just drained from me to such a way that I couldn't even show up for him when he was ill. I just wanted to fucking get out of there. But yeah, he made a point, and I've obviously my face, and that he said, I just feel like you don't want to be here. You know, and I can't help it if I'm ill. All I want is for you to just be here with me. And I'm just like, so even now in this situation, and I get it. Maybe I did look pissed off, but again, it always just came round to him. Every single situation was about him and how much of a bad person I was for making him feel a certain way, if that makes sense. But this is a really bad example. I feel like I've put myself in a bad light here. So I'm debating whether to cut this bit out, actually. But no, I'm not going to, because it is all part of my own lessons, my own journey, in areas that I need to improve as well. And that is important, because relationships, whether that be a friendship, family member, intimate relationship, it's a two-way thing, you know. It's very much give and take. Unfortunately, I'd just given so much by this point that I had nothing less to give, and I just didn't want to. And the very next day I went home, because I stayed over. He wanted me to stay that night, and I went home, and I think I had some plans that night or that day, so we didn't speak. But the day after that, he had tried to ring me in the evening, but I was just so drained. Again, I cannot express to you. I'm sure there's people who are listening right now who will be able to understand how, when you've been drained of your entire reserves, how you cannot show up for anyone, anything, not even yourself. In this situation, he tried to ring me that night, and I didn't answer. And I think I just mentioned in a message that I'm not really up to chatting tonight. I just need a little bit of time for myself. And all I got was a bunch of abuse of how I can't even be there for him. Even when he's sick, I don't want to speak to him. How I'm such a bad person, horrible person. That he's been in bed all day, miserable, and all he wanted was just to talk to me for just 5 minutes. Why can't I just have 5 minutes? Just to try and help me on my day, on my bad day. And I'm like, honestly, I don't feel like I can even pick up the phone to anyone. It wasn't even about him. I was just in such a place by this point. I'm like, I cannot. I think I ended up just saying, look, I'm going to bed now. Like, I can't do this right now. I can't be spoken to in this way. Blah, 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 the usual shite. And I woke up that morning to like bombarded with a bunch of messages again of where he'd been pacing all around his flat at daft o'clock in the morning because I wouldn't respond to him. He couldn't sleep. All I needed to do was just speak to him for 5 minutes. All I needed to do was send him a message back, to not ignore him. How he'd been packing up all of his flat because he didn't want to be there anymore. He might as well move away. It just went on and on and on and on. And again, my usual routine would be to get up and go to the gym. And instead, I ended up round at his flat, basically trying to console him of whatever, again, demons were taking over his mind that had him feeling just so pent up with this anxiety and emotion all night, simply because I was a bit too tired to speak to him on the phone the night before. I think I should probably say at this point as well that I understood he was going through a really difficult time in his life. Like, it was incredibly difficult. And of course, I took all of that into account, so much so that I did make excuses for him, you know, in the stance of I made allowances. I constantly looked at the potential of the relationship and the hope and that things would get better. It's because he's going through this. When this happens, this will get better. When he gets a job, things will get better. When, you know, it was always looking forward, you know, trying to look again at the best side of someone, at the good in someone. But I think it comes to a point, and even a few of my friends said, of course we can make allowances. Of course, when we care about someone, when we are empathetic and compassionate of another person, of course we can take that into account and be mindful that someone's going through a difficult time and to give them those allowances and that breathing room. But there comes a point where it's no excuse. Like, you can understand and have compassion, but it is no excuse for a certain type of behaviour. And it just got to that point. There's just no excuse anymore. Regardless of what any of us are going through in life, it doesn't, you know, no one is coming to save us, and it doesn't mean that we can treat people in a certain way because of what we expect from them because we're going through a hard time. And it was on that day that I just said, I don't actually want this relationship. I actually was happier single on my own. And I just don't think I want this anymore. Like, it's just not working. Like, we're not actually happy. And I could see it from a mutual thing. He was not happy. I was not making him happy. Because if I'm that bad a person, if I make you feel that miserable, why would you want to be with me anyway? You know, and that's the sort of approach that I was giving it, because the way that he spoke about me to such an extent quite often about how I didn't show up for him, how I wasn't this, how I wasn't that. Well, why do you want to be with me then? If I'm that bad a person, you know? But also, I think at this point is when I just said, you know, I don't feel like I want this relationship. We're just making each other miserable here. And I was actually a lot happier single. And I think because I was going through my own shit with my business failing, I had shit going on with my house, I've got tenants living in my house, I'm living at my mum's. Like, and I remember speaking to my mum about some of the issues that he was having and how it impacted me and how I was trying to help him. And she said to me, but you've got a lot of your own stuff going on. You need to be concentrating on that. You need to be dealing with that. How can you pour into someone else's cup when you haven't even got anything in your own? And it was true. That was a situation that I was in. I was trying my hardest to support this guy who was, let's be honest, still grieving his father having passed. He'd lost his job. I'm just really trying to help him, support him, make him feel better while I'm drowning in my own shit, but then feeling bad when I'm not showing up for him because then he's blaming me. And it was just such a toxic cycle. So at that point, we actually had a little break. Even that, like I say, having a break just 2 months into relationship is a joke in itself, isn't it? You're obviously not right for each other. I'm sorry, but it's the most exciting time of a relationship, and yet it was the worst time ever for me. But yeah, we had a break, and maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, decided to meet up just for like a lunch. And he was convinced that he'd changed in that time. He'd turned his life around in that time, managed to get set up with a job, getting his funds together, sorted everything with his flat. Things were looking up, things were better, and he wasn't feeling as needy anymore. He understood that he did rely upon me for his happiness a lot, that he was a drain, that he needed to find happiness of his own. He brought everything up that I felt. And he openly admitted he felt guilty of that he did. It was almost like a need to have me around this for his own happiness. And I think he did state about that he relied upon me too much, really, in that sense. And that, yeah, he knew that he needed to find his own happiness. Did things get better? Absolutely not. It came to Valentine's. Because we'd had our little blip at the end of January, he'd actually really wanted to organise something really romantic for Valentine's, that we would go away. Night away in a hotel, meal. And he was quite keen to do that. But I said, I'm not too sure. I don't really feel comfortable with that because I didn't really see a future with us. And I didn't feel that it was right to maybe push things, if that made sense. So I didn't really want to do that. And I was quite open about that because things were still very much up and down. But as it turned out, when it actually came to Valentine's, it still, of course, would be nice to celebrate, wouldn't it? To acknowledge the day and what have you. So he did admit, like the day before, that we're not doing anything for Valentine's. Like, it's been left too short notice now, and with everything that's gone on, he thought it best to leave it, which I agreed. I did. But I'd gone to the effort of like ordering him a card off Moonpig, like a personalised card, and gotten him like a little present and things like that, because I think with any relationship, even though we was going through a bit of a difficult time, it was our first Valentine's, and it is nice to at least acknowledge the day and things. I stayed over that night, and I got nothing the next day. I got nothing. So I'd gone to this effort of like getting him a little card and that, and which I knew was coming that day. It was going to be delivered on the actual day to his flat and things. And I'm there at his house. Oh, I forgot. He made me my poached egg on toast that morning for Valentine's. 2 months after I'd asked him to make me some sort of breakfast. That would be nice if you made me breakfast. But yeah, he made me the poached egg on toast. And then, yeah, it was like my time to go home. So I just made a point of, very nice, he's just sort of saying, I know we weren't doing anything for Valentine's, but, where's my rose? Where's my little love note or a card or something? Oh, he took that really badly. He took that really, really badly. And he'd gone to the effort of making me breakfast in bed. Why didn't I appreciate that? He'd done this little thing like a week or two prior where he'd set up his room with like some balloons and some candles and gave me a massage and things like that, got some Prosecco in and things like that. And he said that was his Valentine's. I did that really nice gesture for you, and, why don't you appreciate that? Really, that was what I did for you. And I was very appreciative of what he did, by the way. It was beautiful. It did go to a lot of effort. I didn't realise that was our Valentine's. Maybe we should have communicated that together mutually, that this is what we'll do for Valentine's. I don't know. But again, regardless, the issue with this situation is I spoke up about my feelings of being a little bit disappointed that I didn't get anything. And it wasn't about the money, by the way. I would have quite happily had a cute little love note, just a little message, just something. Even children these days write little cards to their parents for Valentine's, and I would have really loved that gesture. It would have been so, so cute. But instead, he went on to sort of say, I did that for Valentine's and you didn't appreciate it. Look, I've got absolutely no money left. I had the last of my money. I had to get my fags last night. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, is this the guy that you're with? When you're literally having this out of body experience, and I'm sort of like questioning myself, like, he's just said he had to spend the last of his money on fags, and here you are, a little bit disappointed that you've not got nothing for Valentine's. And it's that victim blaming kind of mentality of like, I felt blamed for having my feelings and emotions, and I felt wrong for not linking what he'd done for me a few weeks ago to Valentine. It was all this, so very much just sort of the theme of our relationship was a lot of the time me thinking that I'm the problem, that I've not shown up good enough in a certain way, that I've missed this detail, that I've not acknowledged that I've not made him feel good, that I've made him feel bad, that I've done this, I've done that. It was just a general theme, but it's only through, a lot of reflection, a lot of growth and learnings that this is manipulation. This is coercive control. When it comes to moving gyms for someone, for not talking to men, for wearing certain clothes, for not going to a job. If you do this, I'm disappointed. It's very much coercive control. It's manipulation. I don't like to throw around the word narcissist because it's thrown around so much these days. It's almost like a trend. And let's be honest, I do believe that as human beings, we all have little bits of narcissistic traits, okay? We can all display those from time to time in certain situations or through various experiences. I do believe that. And I'm not calling him a narcissist, but there is definitely some traits of where everything was about him and his hard life, his difficulties, and me not showing up for him, helping him, supporting him, not really seeing the other side, the other person and what they're going through and how they're not able to show up, but equally I'm able to see, reflecting back on myself of where I dropped my boundaries straight away. I dropped my values. I had no sense of self-worth, self-love. There was just nothing there. So I just went along with it. And then that equally made me kind of toxic and unhealthy because I'm not even able to communicate in a certain way. I'm not able to show up in my feminine, my positive energy, my loving, kind energy. It was just a mess. The entire relationship was just a mess from start to finish. And I am actually getting towards the end now of where, this was what was beautiful in how my higher self showed up for me massively when I left him. So in the end, I was going on another clinical trial, just little bits of money making activities, you know me. I enjoy doing it. It's really, really beneficial towards health and research for future treatments and things like that, which is just beautiful. So it's like a win-win situation at the end of the day. But actually I was so extremely excited to go on to this clinical trial because it was meant to be a month long, this one, and I just couldn't wait to be away from him. And I'm like, if that doesn't tell you why that you're not meant to be in a relationship with someone, I don't know what will, but I couldn't wait to go on it. And I'll be honest, so in the lead up, I have spoken about this before, so I am repeating myself, but in the lead up to me going, there was a couple of times like where we'd be having sex and oh my gosh, it was so painful. I was tense. I was just on edge. It was painful. And I didn't say anything. I just went along with it. I was just like, just get on with it. Hopefully it'll be done soon. That's just a massive disrespect to yourself, isn't it? He wanted it. I just let him, and I was not in the mood at all. I didn't want to even be with this guy, let alone have sex with him. But I just went along with it. It's such a massive disrespect of yourself. And I think it just proved everything to me, that my body was quite literally rejecting this person. I needed to get out. But yeah, that's just like final thoughts before. While I was actually there, so much happened in that time. There was just so many things that just further instilled the fact that we were not meant to be together. Every time he rang me, some shit had gone on. He was negative about this. He'd gotten angry with this person. He'd punched this wall. He'd done this. And that's another point I will bring out about this guy, is that he did just have that, not really like violent, aggressive, but you could tell there was something burning within, if that makes sense. It's hard to sort of describe. Yeah, he'd gone all in on this guy and said this, and then this happened, and then all about dramas with like his car insurance, his bills, his mum, this, that, whatever. And I'm just in hospital, like I remember I was just like lay on my bed with my phone just balancing on my ear, not even listening. All I could hear was them just going on and on and on. This one day as well, we'd gone out for a walk. You could go out on a walk at this place. And there was quite a lot of men on my clinical trial. And I took this video of like the scenery in the park, the blossom trees were all starting to come out and things like that. And then as I panned out, you could see quite a few guys I was clearly on the walk with. Well, he was extremely hurt by that. Why would I send him that? I'm obviously trying to make him jealous. Now all you can think about is men coming up, sitting on my bed, talking to me. It was just an absolute joke. I barely wanted to speak to him. I ended up getting discharged early because I was having palpitations from the drug that I was taking. I say that so light-hearted, don't I? Just like, yeah, I was having palpitations. I was testing a study drug, but they was testing two alongside each other. And it was actually the already licensed drug that I was taking that gave me slight palpitations. And so it was totally fine, but it was clearly not responding well to my body, so they took me off it. And I got discharged home early, so I left after actually 2 weeks rather than a month. And that night that I came out was when I ended it. And actually, he'd rang me. I'd already mentioned in a message earlier that day that I'm really tired and low on energy, and I just wanted like a little bit of I just needed to have a bit of time on my own, or a little bit of like positive interaction and things like that. I didn't want to have like a negative phone call or a negative message. I said this in the nicest way possible. I can't actually fully remember, but he was going to his mum's wedding that day that I came out. I was invited, but obviously I was meant to be in hospital, so I wasn't able to go because I was still on my way home, as it turned out, on that day. I knew he'd already expressed that he wasn't really looking forward to it, that he was going to be shit. He doesn't like being around his family. He feels like the black sheep. He couldn't wait for the end of the day, things like that. So I just said, look, have a good time. Just do your best, think positive. My usual messages that I do, just go and have fun with your family, and then when you're ready, come home. And I think I'd already had a few negative messages. So I'd already sort of said, look, maybe we'll speak tomorrow when you're feeling a bit brighter and things like that. I just hope that it goes okay and everything, and I'll speak to you soon. And he rang me. And I picked up the phone, and he went, oh, the usual every single time. He's like, oh, God. And I think something took over me and I said, oh, I can't have a negative conversation. I really can't have that right now. I'm not in the right headspace. And he said to me, well, if I can't even speak to my own fucking girlfriend when I've had a bad day, who can I talk to? And he put the phone down on me. And then after that, he was just like non-stop sending me all these messages about how much of a bad person I am, that I'm not there for him, that he just needed to chat for 5 minutes to make himself feel better. And I think there was a couple of back and forth messages, and in the end, I spoke to him. And he said he's been worried about me coming home because he feels that things are off. He knows what's coming, like he knew what was coming when we do meet up, because he could just tell. And I said, yeah, you're right. I'll be honest with you. I was going to end things. I wanted to meet up with you. We can have this chat face to face, but I was going to end things. And he went absolutely berserk. Started kicking all the furniture in his room, shouting, screaming, everything. But once he'd come down from that, we did have a conversation, and it was honestly like my higher self took over. In that moment, that wasn't me speaking. My higher self ended that relationship. And I said, look, you're not going to change my mind at this point. Please don't try to. Let's be as amicable and friendly as possible, but this isn't working. It's not going to work. It never has worked. We've really tried. And I think I said something along the lines of, you deserve someone who wants to be with you, but I don't want that. I don't even feel like I want a relationship at this point. I am happier on my own. I feel better on my own. I need to be on my own. This isn't working. It's not doing me any good. I don't even like who I am. I didn't like who I was at all. I didn't like the person that I was becoming. And so I had to end it with him. And we did. We ended it there. I was bombarded with messages for a while after that, basically saying how much he wants to change and make things right, and that it's only because he really likes me so much that he behaves in such a way, and that he knows he's obsessed with me, he knows it's unhealthy, the usual things, that he needs to find his own happiness and things like that. Yeah, so we stayed in touch a little bit, went on the occasional walk, things like that, because I genuinely, I feel like prior to the relationship we were good friends, And I think even at the very end, there was a part of me that felt this need to stick around. And I think there's a fear. Yeah, I guess this is again, the unhealthy side of me is that even when we had ended things, because I knew that he wanted to be with me, that he wanted to maintain that contact, that he was really, really trying, there was a part of me that couldn't fully let go. This is the first situation at the end of a relationship that I've been in where I have been in control, because I've had 2 relationships, proper relationships prior to that, and both were ended by the other person, not myself. So this was a really unique situation for me. It was something that I wasn't used to, and it almost made it harder. Is that strange? It's hard to explain, but it almost made it more difficult. I feel like in the times in the past, I didn't have a choice, did I? They left me. They weren't interested. That was that. Whereas with this, I didn't want this guy. I knew I had to end it, but this person's still trying to be with me. They still really like me. They still want me. They want to make it work. And that's a very unique situation, and that made it quite difficult in the sense of it was always the other person. They moved on prior to me. And when I say moved on, because now I believe moving on is very much with yourself, but at the time they'd moved on to another person. And so there was a part of me that feared, well, if I just cut ties, he's just going to meet someone else. Now, obviously, looking back now, I can see, please fucking go and meet someone else. Leave me the fuck alone. But at the time, there was that, again, very toxic, unhealthy part of me. They didn't want him to meet anyone else. Can you see? So can you see how I am actually the problem in some of this situation as well? And there's areas that I've really had to work on here, because none of us are perfect. We all have feelings, and we all have little triggers that can make us behave or show up in a certain way, and we're just trying to protect ourselves. But at the end of the day, that isn't right, is it? To keep in touch with someone, so to say, because I was just so scared that he'd meet someone else. But yeah, we did stay in touch for a little while, because I did kind of still want to be his friend, weirdly enough. I don't know. Again, I think that's the that part of me that did enjoy our friendship. And as well, at the time, I had very little friends. I had very little social life. So again, that was another part of me that I was trying to protect and look after, is that he was someone who wanted to spend time with me. And it's really sad, and I can see things so clearly now, why I was behaving in a certain way and why that wasn't good either. But as it turned out in the very end, we'd had a bad week. There was a few things that I'd done, of course, that had upset him. Things that he was unhappy about, where he'd expressed it, and things I'd done wrong, and the theme of our entire relationship basically was him telling me about every which way in which I'd hurt him after all, wasn't it? But at this point, like I say, we're not even in a relationship, we're just friends. But he'd messaged me a few times one night, he wanted to talk, and he gave me an ultimatum that he wanted me to sleep over at his house. He wanted to know that we were moving forward here, or to just leave things as it is and we just need to part our ways. So I obviously had said, okay, well, we need to part our ways. I think that's the best thing for both of us. And yeah, he wasn't happy with that at all. Didn't want to. I think he felt like I'd probably been leading him on, giving him false hope. And there is a small part of me that did. However, I did make it very clear when we decided to meet up on the occasional times that we were being friends, that I did not want a relationship. I made that very clear. And that we would just enjoy each other's company. But anyway, regardless of that, I told him that we should leave things when he gave me that ultimatum, that I certainly didn't want to stay over at his house. And that we should part our ways and just leave it there if things aren't going forward. Because that was the best thing for both of us. I knew that by that point. And yeah, the next day, again, I think he walked out of his job. He was bombarded me with messages saying that he was going to turn up at my gym. He needed to talk to me, that he couldn't get through his day until we'd sorted this out. There was nothing to sort out. And I said that there's nothing to sort out. Let's just stop hurting each other at this point. Let's just, part our ways and just get on with life. And I was very detached in that way, but I was also very compassionate. But the message that I got back in the end when I said there is nothing to say, let's just stop hurting each other and move on. And the message I got back, oh, whatever, Beck, I was lying to you anyway. I was dating in that time that we weren't together. So when I'd first split up with him, but then we still decided to stay friends, he said he'd had a little bit of attention from a few girls that wanted to go out with him and that, but he never did. And then obviously he said that, yeah, I have been dating. And I think I just responded with a laughing emoji. There was nothing else to say. At that point, that is when it really just clicked in my mind that he has said that, he has knowingly said that with a motive to hurt me. That's the only reason that you would say something like that, to hurt that person. And I think that is just some fucked up shit right there, isn't it? I think when it hit me in that respect, that he's chosen to say that purposely to hurt me right now because he's not gotten his own way. And I just thought, I do not want this guy in my life whatsoever anymore. That is it. Drew the line, cutting ties, done. He has since been blocked. Going back to the situation with regards to the money that he owed me, I had conversations through my mum with him. By that point, I think he owed me around about £400. I have since got all that back now. But even that alone, like I said before, for a woman to be lending out money to a guy is just, that I personally feel like that's a red flag in itself now. Any man that I meet going forward, they will have their shit together. They will be financially stable, they're secure. They will be a provider, a secure provider. They will be such a divine, masculine man, so emotionally stable, so emotionally mature, well experienced, just so open-minded, healed, into the growth and development, wanting to be better, understanding their own flaws and working and improving on themselves. Ideally goes or has been to therapy, things like that, because that is the man that I want now. That is the man that I deserve. And after all of the work that I have done, as I've said, I've reflected on the areas that I have been wrong here as well, because I have been far from perfect myself. But I can see how much being in a situation like that changed me, changed who I was, to an extent where I just did not recognise myself. I was in such a bad place and I was showing up poorly in general day-to-day life. It was a toxic as fuck relationship. It was so unhealthy. It lasted 6 months out of my life, and the impact that had upon me, it took me another, I'd say 3 to 4 months for me to finally start getting my spark back, my light back, my energy up. It took time. The theme of this relationship was constantly that I just kept looking at the potential of how it could be, what I saw that it could be, what I hoped that it would be. And I think that's very, very common in any sort of relationship anyway. What we want, what we see in a person is often our own perception of what we want to see or the relationship that we want to have. And we can almost try and mould someone into that. I think that's almost what he was doing to me in a way. He liked the idea of me. There was definitely things he liked about me, but he was trying to shape me. He was trying to mould me in what he wanted. And equally, I kept thinking, oh, he's going through this bad time and it's not his fault and I've got to allow for that and I have to be understanding and compassionate and I can't just leave him just because he's going through a difficult time. And I think at one point he even mentioned that if this is the worst point in my life that I could be going through right now, are you really going to give up on me because of this? Just think how amazing things could be. So even he instilled that hope and that potential as well as what I already had. And if nothing else, again, like a lesson is to look at things the way that they are, the way that it is. It is a common trait that a lot of people have, that they look at the potential. Where is it? What are you getting from this now? Regardless of what you want, of what you hope, of what you see maybe in the future, where are things now? Are you happy now? How do you feel now? And like I say, at the time, I wasn't happy. I was better off on my own. And that was the situation. And even I can relate it to my past relationship with my ex-husband, for example. He went through a difficult time when he started his business. He'd lost a lot of money. He was working 24/7 and coming home and absolutely shattered and the worry and everything. And he went through a very difficult time, and I was extremely supportive of that as a wife. I knew of him from the beginning and the sort of man that he was, and the relationship that we had. I was able to support him best, knowing of how things usually are. So you can kind of accept that a little bit more. But when it's literally shit from the get-go, don't know any different, do you? I literally didn't know any different. The relationship was hard from the get-go. There was nothing to compare it to that, oh, things will be better. It once was, and this is just a bump in the road. I mean, also we even said, is it right person, wrong time? And that again could be an excuse. I just think we were completely misaligned, and we were both had areas in which we were seeking some sort of validation, some sort of healing, some sort of comfort, but in completely the wrong ways in each other, basically. But yeah, I just wanted to put that in there, that I was extremely aware, understanding and compassionate to his situation. Hence why I stayed in that relationship so long, because all I could think about and dream about and wish for was the hope and the potential of what things could be in my mind, of which I had absolutely no evidence of whatsoever. So yeah, big lesson there, definitely. And it's since been almost another year, hasn't it, since I first ended it, that I'm fully in this sort of healed mindset, the areas that I can fully see where things went wrong from a clear perspective. I can see where I was at fault, and I have grown so much through that, and I hope that he has as well. We were not meant to be, we are not meant to be, but I don't hate the guy. I don't believe that he's a cruel person. I don't believe that he inherently wanted to hurt me, but he's a very low, a very dark energy, a very negative energy, and he did need me. He just needed me too much, to an extent of nothing was ever enough. you know? He needed saving, and I was not his saviour. We cannot be anyone's saviour. We have to save ourselves. And I do believe that the next relationship I have, it will be more of that we are so whole as we are. The other person just simply adds to an already beautiful life. I'm so happy with who I am. I love myself to bits. I love my life. I'm grateful every single day. The next person that walks into my life, they really need to add something into it. And I want that for them as well. I want them to be so secure in who they are, to love who they are, to be so proud of the position that they're in, and yeah, just to be so like at peace in their own selves and their own life, that I would just be a bonus to them as well. That is the key to a relationship. We cannot rely on another person for our own happiness. We cannot rely on another person to supply us with our needs. We have to give to ourselves. And when we are in that state, that is when we're able to attract the mutually healthy, divine masculine, divine feminine. Yeah, this has been an incredibly long one, and it's pretty much just me been reeling off like some sort of storybook. But I do hope that this has been understood, that something maybe has stuck out for you, maybe for your own experiences, for what you're going through right now, for what you have been through, or maybe for future. Something in this episode may help you for your future relationships. It may help you want to improve on yourself and see areas and flaws and imperfections that you have, in areas in which you would like to grow and get better at. Because that's all we can really do, isn't it? Just work on being the best version of ourselves every single day. With that, I think that concludes today's episode. Thank you so much. If you are still listening right now, hats off to you for listening to me ramble on about my very first and very last toxic relationship, because I am certain that will never happen ever again. Not just because of the red flags or things for me to look out for, but how best I can show up as well, and how my behaviour, my boundaries, my communication, my personality, my worth will dictate what I receive. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please, as always, leave a rating, leave a review, share this with a friend, and please, I'm always open to all of your critique, your feedback. It means so much to me. And of course, the more engagement and recommendation that this podcast receives means I am put out there and seen by the right people who need to hear the messages that I have also. And it means that I am able to continue showing up and providing more of these podcast episodes for you guys. So thank you again, as always. I hope you have a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and I'll see you on the next episode.